How you doing, everyone? I don't know nobody's gonna join, but if somebody joins, it's a miracle, miracle. Let's see. Not bad. It's hot in this apartment. It's fucking hot. I hate this weather. I can't wait for the fall to start soon. It's just hot and I hate it so much. My back hurts like hell. I feel somebody's grabbing a needle, like a hammer, and I can't breathe. I'm waiting for the exhale. It's nobody shows no love. It's oh well. How you doing? Yeah, I can't sleep. My back hurts. Don't forget to show this channel some love. Hit that like and subscribe button. What sport do you like? I like baseball. I'm a Yankees fan. This is the cause I don't know how I'm gonna feel. Yep, a New York Yankees fan. So you know that gives you a hint where I'm from. How you doing? And we only talk English in this channel. I don't understand that language. How you doing, Tank? Fucking hot. Caliente. Hot. I have the AC on, but still. I got lower back pain and neck pain. How you doing, everyone that's coming in? Don't forget to show some love over here. Hit that like button. And hit that subby. Hit that sub as well. Hope that algorithm. I'm not that funny, bro. I'm serious, I'm not funny. You just chilling, bro. Chilling, talking. I mean, I'm smoking weed. Where are you? Now we got the freaks out here. I blocked him. He's too freaky. You didn't see. He's that was drinking his nuts. I don't go that way. I only like women. I'm eating a ham and cheese sandwich. That's some good shit. This strain is called, the marijuana vape is called Blue Tangerine or Tangs. What noise? You hear footsteps? I don't hear nothing. I don't hear nothing. I don't hear no footsteps. Me, my name is Brian. It's part of the live stream. And you spell my name wrong. It's Brian. You spell my name wrong. It's Brian. Yeah, Brian. The normal way. Well, you still spell my name wrong. Yes. Good morning, everyone. Don't forget, everyone, to hit that like and subscribe button. Help the algorithm out. Hey, Judy. Hi. Don't also like. Hit that subscribe button. If you're a new subscriber, just put number 1. So do you want to know? Do you guys want to? Do you guys want to know my weight loss journey or no? It's up to you, because I did have weight loss surgery. Okay. So 20. No, I used to be fat. Fatter. I used to be 400 pounds. So what you tried to call me? So you called me fat? Yeah, I used to be fat. I used to be 400 pounds in 2018. Around 2018, about 2017, I was fat, and so I went to see a doctor, and the doctor said, Brian, if you don't take care of yourself, you're not gonna live to see 30. You're gonna have a heart attack and stuff. So back then they would show me 3 procedures I can have, so I don't die. So they showed me like the 3 weight loss surgeries. And all right, so I watched the videos, and they showed me the videos. And I saw them. So basically, the way you have to do it is, for you, because I couldn't do it alone. Like, so I had it's the gastric sleeve, the gastric bypass, and the gastric wide dual switch. So I decided to get the gastric bypass. Around at my surgery was my surgery was on Valentine's Day of 2018. When you do have when before the surgery you have to do a weigh-in for a whole year. It's intense. Because remember, surgery is only a tool. It's not the solution. Everything's in the mind. So, like, it's not the solution. Everything is in the brain. Like, you see, this sandwich will last me an hour. Back then, it only last me like maybe 5 minutes. So everything's up here. So, because if I eat too fast, I will have to run to the bathroom and puke it. I don't want that. So you got to be careful. It's a mindset thing. So, and there's always gonna be complications and stuff like that. Like, I cannot take any. What's the word? anything that helps with inflammation, like no NSAIDs and stuff like that, which sucks. But you know, before surgery, I had to do a before the weigh-in, because it was hard for me to lose weight. Before surgery, so the doctor said, Ryan, do a protein shake diet before surgery. So I did that, lost like 30 pounds. And then during surgery, I was like before I went to do the surgery, I kept doing it. And then after surgery, I was just doing only protein shakes diet. And right now I'm like 200 and something pounds. And there's some days I don't eat, but your body gets used to it. It's all in the brain. I can go out days without eating. But it's not healthy. But if I don't have food, I've been here a year and a half, no donations, no Venmo donations, nothing. And matter of fact, I'm not even monetized. So imagine when I do become monetized. I'm not gonna hurt myself. I'm not that type of person. Hi, Cakes Boo. No, but um, yeah. But yeah. But Cakes Boo is one of my favorite mods. She's good. She's a good person. So yeah, I'm addicted to food. Yeah. I hope one day I could able to to make a lot of money on YouTube, pay my rent, and then go visit Australia. Because nobody likes to, because I'm disabled. So I want to make enough to get off of disability, pay my rent, and travel. Because nobody want, because the government, this is what the government wants to do. They want to hold you back. So they say, oh, you can only make this amount. And if you make over this, they want to hold you back. But if you reach a goal, you said, fuck the government. You don't need the government until you hit a certain age. Then when you hit 65, they have no choice but to give you Social Security because you work for it. And at 65, you make all the money you want. Or 70. At 70, if I'm still alive, God forbid, I'll make as much money I want on YouTube, and they have to give me my Social Security because you work for it. I know people at 70, 75, they still working. Because it's so expensive. You have to work. You, I make $8,000 a year. You think I'm gonna keep using my credit cards over and over and over just to survive? No. Nobody does want to live that life. But, for now, I gotta live that way. Oh, you don't have a credit card? Trust me, you don't even want to get one. That's a good choice. You don't have one, Cakes Boo. You don't want one. Trust me. It's a big problem. My credit score is not bad, cause I try to. You don't want a credit card, cause even if I have to make a minimum payment, I'll make a minimum payment, because credit card debt is a pain in the ass. And I live in one of the states that are expensive. And thank God I got family that's, they tell me to come over and go eat. Um, they're not going to deny anybody food. Like, they need to change the laws. Like, if I was president, the max a credit card companies could charge you on credit card interest is 10%. Because they still making profit. They don't need to be greedy. Then $35 on late fee. Cut that in half. $15 a day late. One time, if they late once, then it'd be $7. Afterwards, it's $15. Let people, let give people a break. I'll be here. And then the annual fees are ridiculous. Cut those in half as well. If the rich people want to pay for the annual fee, let them pay for it, but not the poor people. But if he lives in Australia, so over there is Wednesday night, almost Thursday. Cause over, every state, every country, every state has also different laws when it comes to credit card companies as well. No, I'm not Australian. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a New Yorker. A New Yorker. Alright, don't forget to like and subscribe, so... They still talking about this case.
With their free Luigi shirts and hats to get a glimpse of the 27-year-old. Tuesday marked Luigi's first court appearance in New York State Court since February. His
Free
attorneys were hoping to have his
Luigi!
state charges dropped, The defense claims that the terrorism charges were legally insufficient, and they moved to dismiss the entire indictment because they believed it violated double
Thank you for
jeopardy.
liking and
And argued
subscribing.
the state
Appreciate
case
it.
should be stayed pending the results of the ongoing federal case, too. But here's what the judge decided to do. Judge Gregory Caro ruled to dismiss 2 murder charges related to acts of terrorism. So what that means is the judge is saying counts 1 and 2 of the indictment are out. Now, those charges were murder in the first degree in furtherance of an act of terrorism and second degree murder as a crime of terrorism. The judge tossed those counts out because he ruled they were legally insufficient. In his 12-page ruling, Justice Caro first started off with the facts of the case. On December 4th, Brian Thompson was gunned down outside of a hotel in Midtown Manhattan. Video surveillance showed a man in a mask, wearing all black, carrying a backpack, draw their gun, and shoot the CEO in the back and the leg. Right before the shooting, though, that same man drank from a water bottle, threw it in the trash can, he dropped his cell phone, and even disposed of the backpack in Central Park. Now, when investigators recovered ballistics from the scene, there were 3 now infamous shell casings.
I remember this.
Depose, delay, and deny written on them. If you've been following the case, then you know what happens next. Investigators traced the shooter's movements to a hostel in Upper Manhattan. The shooter allegedly used a fake ID with the name Mark Rosario on it, and that eventually led investigators to Pennsylvania. 5 days after Brian Thompson was killed, Luigi was arrested at a McDonald's in Altoona. A 9mm gun was recovered from his backpack, as well as ammunition, a silencer, a fake New Jersey driver's license with the name Mark Rosario on it, cash, a passport, and a notebook with Luigi's alleged journal entries. According to court documents, there were 2 letters in the backpack, one addressed to his family and one addressed to the FBI. Ballistic analysis shows that the shell casings recovered from the scene were fired by the gun found in his backpack. And his DNA was found on the water bottle found at the scene and on the cell phone and backpack thrown out by the shooter, including fingerprints also found on the water bottle and Kind Bar wrapper. Now, you might be thinking,
Kind Bar is pretty good.
That's a
like
lot
$4
of
a bar.
How did the judge drop charges despite all of that? Well, he had his reason. According to his ruling, the people, or state prosecutors, argued Luigi's alleged journal entries found in his backpack were evidence of terroristic intent. But the judge says those writings ultimately don't aid the state's argument. The judge wrote, quote, "The defendant's apparent objective, as stated in his writings, was not to threaten, intimidate, or coerce, but rather to draw attention to what he perceived as the greed of the insurance industry, and as additional possible consequence to negatively affect the financials of the company." The defendant emphasized that he wished to spread a message and win public support about everything wrong with our health system. The defendant explicitly contrasted himself with Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, because he indiscriminately mail-bombed innocents and crossed the line to terrorists, the worst thing a person can be. The judge went on to write, quote, "While defendant's own characterization of his conduct is, of course, not despotive, where there is no other evidence of terroristic intent, the writings fail to supply that evidence contrary to the people's characterization. The people presented sufficient evidence that the defendant murdered Brian Thompson in a premeditated and calculated execution. That does not mean, however, the defendant did so with terroristic intent." State prosecutors have alleged that United Healthcare employees felt fearful after Brian Thompson's murder, and some even got personal threats. But the judge said employees were receiving threats even before Thompson was murdered. However, in his ruling, he wrote, quote, "Every murder has the potential to induce some degree of fear. Even making the comparison, if a murder happens on the subway, riders may feel fearful, but that fails to establish the defendant's intent or if the conduct fits the statutory definition of terrorism." In his ruling, he wrote, quote, "While there is no doubt that the crime at issue here is not ordinary street crime, it does not follow that all non-street crimes were meant to be included within the reach of the terrorism statute." While the people place great emphasis on defendant's ideological motive, there is no indication in the statute that a murder committed for ideological reasons, in this case, the defendant's apparent desire to draw attention to what he perceived as inequities or greed within the American healthcare system, fits within the definition of terrorism, without establishing the necessary element of an intent to intimidate or coerce. Now, according to the Associated Press, the New York State courthouse erupted with the sounds of cheers and claps when news came down the terrorism charges were dropped. But for the defense and even his supporters, he isn't completely out of the wind. He still faces second-degree murder, plus other charges like criminal possession of a weapon, criminal possession of a loaded firearm, possession of a forged instrument, criminal possession of an assault rifle, criminal possession of an ammo clip, and criminal possession of a ghost gun. And that's just in the New York State case. In his federal case in New York, he's charged with 2 counts of stalking, 1 count of murder through use of a firearm, plus another charge for a firearms offense. And in his state charge in Pennsylvania, he's facing charges for carrying a gun without a license, forgery, falsely identifying himself to authorities, and possessing instruments of crime. So what's next for Luigi? Well, it's a race to see who will try the case first, state prosecutors in New York or Pennsylvania, or the federal prosecutors who are seeking the death penalty. I'm joined now by attorney Rich Schoenstein. Wow. Rich, always great to see you, and thanks so much for joining me today. Are you surprised the judge dropped the terrorism charges in the Luigi's state case?
I am surprised, I will say. And I would say 2 slightly contradictory things.
Okay.
One is, I always thought the terrorism part of this charge was a stretch and was going to be difficult for the prosecutors to sustain, but I am surprised that the judge booted it out of the case before trial. I've had both of those views.
And what are your thoughts on his ruling where he said United Healthcare employees were already receiving threats even prior to Brian Thompson's murder, but particularly the line where he said every murder has the potential to induce some degree of fear, but that it doesn't necessarily mean it fits the definition of terrorism under the statute?
I agree with that. I read through his analysis. I thought it's a pretty well-reasoned, pretty concise opinion. I'll tell you one line that stood out. He says, on page 5 in the legal analysis, the court will note that the term terrorism has been famously difficult to define. And that to me is exactly the point. It is incapable of a precise definition. There's no metric involved. You don't have to kill a certain number of people or shoot after a certain number of people or make a particular demand or have a particular goal in mind to be terrorism. And the fact that members of the insurance industry were already concerned because of public feelings about the insurance industry, that doesn't take it out of the ambit of terrorism at all, as far as I'm concerned. Wow. So I thought it was a pretty well-written decision. At bottom, I disagree with it.
Interesting. And elaborate more on that.
Well, I think so the reason I disagree with it is I think it should be up to the jury. I think it's not entirely clear without a fulsome presentation of the evidence at trial what was the motive for this crime and what was the intent of the crime. And if it could be proved beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury that this shooting was done precisely to cause fear among members of the insurance industry or to bring attention to it or to spur government action or to create some change, that to me potentially brings it into the ambit of terrorism, at least enough.
But the judge disagrees.
12 individual jurors the opportunity to come together, debate the issue, and reach a decision. And they may not think it's terrorism at the end of the day, which is fine. That's how the justice system works. But I don't know about taking it away from them as a possibility. I don't agree with the judge taking it out of the jury's hand at this juncture.
And it seemed like overall, the Luigi alleged diary entries or journal entries were kind of the center of the terrorism charge even being brought against him in state court. And the writings were pretty interesting, and I'll say that kind of loosely here, where he allegedly compared himself to the Unabomber, but claimed that the Unabomber took it a step further by murdering civilians, whereas if these were writings from Luigi, as prosecutors allege them to be, it seems like they kind of have a strong argument for premeditation because the gist of the murder for Brian Thompson was intended to bring this revolutionary change to the healthcare industry instead of taking the route where it was targeting innocent civilians in a way that instead it was really directed and planned out for the CEO.
He didn't have to kill him, though.
Right. Well, it was definitely premeditated. I mean, premeditated means it was planned, and this was immaculately planned. He traveled across stage lines. By the way, I'm making the assumption that the allegations are accurate for the purpose of this discussion. He is, of course, afforded the right to a fair trial. He is innocent until proven guilty, and that still has to be proved at trial. And unless that happens at trial, he's not found guilty. But to have this discussion, I have to assume that some of this evidence is accurate. And if the evidence is accurate, the fact that he would compare himself in his own writings to a terrorist, to me, is part of the interesting point here, right? He thought he was creating terror. Possibly he intended to create terror or fear or doubt or something, instill some feeling in the insurance industry that would cause change. This wasn't a personal crime, as I understand it. He wasn't mad at Brian Thompson because Brian Thompson individually did something to him, denied a claim, hurt his family. He wasn't going after him man and man. He was going after him as a figurehead of something much larger, which means he was trying to send a message that was much larger and I think could be interpreted. And you talk about the writings, and I don't know if you're going to get to it, but of course then we have the engravings on the bullet casings that also are there to send a message to the public after this crime is committed. So it's not just about shooting and killing a particular person. It's about more than that.
Yeah, and it seemed like the plan was kind of already set in stone because I think in one court document, prosecutors were alleging that Luigi allegedly was kind of staking out the place. He had run into Brian Thompson the day prior, and all of this just very interesting information that we've been seeing kind of in court filings coming out over the past few months. And does it come as a surprise to you that the judge rejected the double jeopardy argument? I mean, we've seen plenty of state cases that are parallel in a way to federal cases, but are you surprised that the defense really possibly thought they had an argument for double jeopardy there?
No, I'm not surprised the defense made the argument, and I'm not surprised that it was rejected for the reasons you say and because they're different crimes. And of course, that's very important right now because even if we've taken the highest charge off the table in New York, the federal charges carry not only a life imprisonment without parole possibility, but possibility of the death penalty. And it may be, we might see the federal charges now leapfrog the state charges, especially with what seems to be the federal government's interest in this case. We might see those charges push ahead of the state charges and become even more aggressive in light of what now has happened in state court.
And do you think that this changes anything for his federal case in terms of maybe possibly a federal judge could drop a couple charges in his federal case too?
No, it doesn't. There's not a terrorism aspect to the federal case. In many ways, the federal case is an easier sell. The thing that gets you to the death penalty in the federal case is killing somebody with a gun. And that obviously happened here. Now, you still have to go to a jury. You still have to go and check all the aggravating and mitigating circumstances and get a jury on board with it. But it's a much clearer path to a death-eligible crime under the federal system. And it wasn't about terrorism at all in the federal case, and therefore the state case shouldn't really affect that. It shouldn't affect the judge's thinking.
Nope.
And in your opinion, you know, when we look at the kind of laundry list in a way of Luigi's charges that he's facing in state court in Pennsylvania, in New York, and federal court, do you think that prosecutors, because I remember when I think you might have remembered too, when the case first came down and it just seemed like everyone just kind of wanted in a way to take a bite out of him where they might have been overcharging. Some people could argue that prosecutors were overcharging him in his cases, but what are your thoughts? Do you think that this was an overcharge in the case when I'm talking right now about the New York State case? Do you think it was overcharged? What are your thoughts overall?
I don't think it was overcharged. I know there's a lot of commentators who think it was overcharged from the beginning. I thought it was a bit of a stretch. It's somewhat a novel theory. It is not clearly defined, as the judge said, and it made the burden of proof harder. I will say this for the state case. In some ways, this makes the state's burden much easier, right? If they go to trial without having to demonstrate that there's an act of terrorism here, all they have to demonstrate is a premeditated act of murder. They have a much easier time meeting the burden of proof. It's much harder to think of jury nullification if it's just a question of whether or not he killed a person and whether or not that was premeditated.
That's true.
That's much easier for the state. So it really lightens the load for the prosecutors I should say actually the New York County prosecutors, in terms of pushing this case to trial, that might be advantageous to get a conviction. Because the harder you make a case, the harder it is even to get a conviction, right? So that could be of some help, and that could ultimately be to the detriment of Mangione. The other thing that could be to his detriment is if you've now perked up the interest of the federal government and they think we have to push forward, because if we leave this to the state, he's going to end up in jail for 25 years and then with the possibility of parole. And we don't think that is a sufficient enough penalty for a premeditated murder, shooting someone in the back on Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, and I, remember covering this case. We discussed it during a panel at CrimeCon, and this case truly has people so divided. Are you surprised that the case has resonated with so many people, and are you surprised that there are still people supporting Luigi, even though prosecutors say there's a lot of evidence against him?
So I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised
I keep
either.
saying, and maybe I've said this to you before, Bonnie and Clyde had supporters and fans, right? And that was a different era. That was before social media. That was before it became so easy to be heard. So the idea that among the millions and millions of people who live in the United States, there are some who support Luigi Mangione. First of all, the idea that there are people who are angry at the insurance industry, totally unsurprising. Right. I'm a little angry at the insurance industry, right? I get that. So there's all that underlying context. There is an incredible interest in true crime stories, as you know better than anybody, right? What you do for a living. And you put those together and you allow people to comment freely on social media. Guilty as I'm sure we'll get a lot of comments in response to this.
That's my job, to make sure you guys are here.
So you get a lot of content, and I'm not surprised there are some who support him. I don't agree with those people, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and it was interesting, too, because when we were doing our panel discussion, we were asking the audience who could possibly be jurors. Maybe not.
I like the cat, though. It's a nice cat.
We asked them, do you think Luigi Mangione is guilty? A lot of people raised their hands. And then some of those same people also raised their hands when they also said that they would nullify him in a jury or acquit him if they were to serve on the jury. So it's interesting to hear the thoughts of people and what they think about this case, too, even though prosecutors say they have a lot of evidence against him. Rich Schoenstein, thank you so much for, one, being here with me today. I really appreciate it, and making time for us today. It's always great to see you.
It's always great to see you and to be on here. Have a good day.
Thanks, Rich. Luigi Mangione's next hearing in Pennsylvania is scheduled for November 7th, and his next hearing in New York State Court is December 1st. Right now, it's unclear his next appearance in federal court. Thanks so much for joining us here on Law and Crime. I'm Elizabeth Milner.
What the hell?
I had a long day, man.
Everyone, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. How's everyone's day? Ask me a question. Ask me anything if you guys want, as long as it's appropriate. I'll answer it. Well, this is the first time I had 46 people on my channel. I hope everybody's having a good week. That's crazy. Now people's leaving. I mentioned how many people I have, and people leave.
The suspect in the shooting death of political activist Charlie Kirk appeared
How you
in court
doing?
today as investigators build their case against him.
How you
Officials
doing?
in
Hello
Utah are
from
sharing a
Albany,
description of what prosecutors
Western
say is a
Australia.
handwritten note and
That's
a series
cool.
of text messages from the suspect admitting he
Don't
carried out the
forget to
deadly
hit that
attack.
like and
NBC
subscribe
10's
button.
Kelsey Kushner is here in the studio with more on the suspect's first appearance today. Kelsey.
Jacqueline, well, prosecutors say the suspect, Tyler Robinson, targeted Kirk because of his political beliefs. They say text messages between him and his roommate proved that this was a planned attack, and prosecutors are now seeking the death penalty. Tonight, a closer look at the evidence in the assassination of activist and influencer Charlie Kirk. New information in the case brought forward by county prosecutors say the suspect, Tyler Robinson, confessed to the killing, planning the attack in advance. Evidence presented in court included text messages and a note he left behind for his roommate.
Quote, I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it.
Another piece of key evidence, a text exchange allegedly between Robinson and his roommate moments after the attack.
I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you. Roommate, you weren't the one who did it, right? Robinson, I'm sorry.
Prosecutors say DNA on the trigger of the rifle that killed Kirk matched Robinson's. They say he discarded the rifle and clothing and asked his roommate to delete texts and stay silent if questioned by police. Appearing in court by video conference for the first time, the 22-year-old sat quietly in a protective vest as the judge formally charged him with 7 counts. Prosecutors say they're now pursuing the death penalty.
The murder of Charlie Kirk is an American tragedy.
It is, it's sad.
And he is facing aggravated murder and witness tampering among several other charges. He is being held without bail, awaiting the next hearing set for September 29th.
Okay, so
nobody deserves
this
to
is
lie.
happening in court now, folks. That is Tyler Robinson appearing via video link. Let's listen in.
Very well.
And I thank you.
I want to watch this one, 31 minutes.
Could you state your name?
Tyler James Robinson.
Tyler Robinson, the suspected killer of political activist Charlie Kirk, who was brazenly gunned down.
Everyone, please talk among each other. Please like and subscribe as well.
Out in Utah, has officially been charged and appeared in court for the very first time. We are breaking down all of the legal angles of today's developments, from the charges, the evidence, anyone else going to be arrested, and most importantly,
Nobody else will get
what we
arrested.
expect next. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We have charges and a first court appearance for 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, the man accused of shooting to death political activist Charlie Kirk last week at a speaking debating engagement at Utah Valley University. And I want to get into what just happened at this first court appearance.
Thank you, I
We're going to talk about
appreciate
the
it.
charges, the defenses, evidence, discord, a lot about that too, federal charges. But what did the day start with? There was a press conference held out in Utah to announce the formal state charges against Tyler
State
Robinson.
and federal charges.
Here's Utah County Attorney Jeffrey Gray.
I am filing a criminal information charging Tyler James Robinson, age 22, with the following
He
crimes.
ruined his own life and he's 22 years
Count
old.
1, aggravated murder, a capital offense, for intentionally or knowingly causing the death of Charlie Kirk under circumstances that created a great risk of death to others. Count 2, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious
headache.
bodily injury.
My hands fall
a
asleep fast,
first-degree
too.
felony. The state is further alleging aggravating factors on counts 1 and 2 because the defendant is believed to have targeted Charlie Kirk based on Charlie Kirk's political expression and did so knowing that children were present and would witness the homicide.
That's crazy. Why would you kill somebody for no reason?
The
Just
state is
based on
also
what they believe in.
charging
That's fucked up.
defendant with count 3, obstruction of justice, a second-degree felony for moving and concealing the rifle used in the shooting. Count 4, obstruction of justice, a second-degree felony for
People are
disposing
fucking
the
cruel.
clothing he wore during the shooting. Count 5, witness tampering, a third-degree felony for directing his roommate to delete his incriminating texts. Count 6, witness tampering, a third-degree felony for directing his roommate to stay silent if police questioned him. And count 7, commission of a violent offense in the presence of a child, a Class A misdemeanor, for committing homicide, knowing that children were present and may have
I hope you
seen
guys
or
are
heard the
420
murder
friendly.
and did so based on Charlie Kirk's political expression.
Okay, again, those are state charges, not federal charges, state charges. And Gray announced that they plan to file a notice of intent to seek the death penalty here. Yes, there are some new details. Yes, there are new charges here, because when you look at the original probable cause affidavit that listed murder and obstruction and the firearm discharge charges, those were the ones he was booked on. We now learned about these aggravating factors, right? About children and political expression.
I would never
and these
kill
witness
anybody for that
tampering, and
reason.
additional obstruction and violent offense charges. This is new. And by the way,
The only
Gray revealed a lot.
The only reason you should kill somebody is defend yourself or third party.
More details too that are going to be pivotal in this case. Reading from the criminal information that was filed here, and yes, there's no grand jury that's necessarily used in Utah, but this is kind of like the indictment of criminal information. Aside from all of this surveillance footage allegedly capturing Robinson before, during, and after the shooting, including on the roof, you need to listen to this. They claim that he deposited the rifle in the woods right after the shooting, right? The information says, quote, the rifle, ammunition rounds, and towel were sent for forensic processing. DNA consistent with
You guys can hear me
was found
talk,
on the
right?
trigger, other parts of the rifle, the fired cartridge casing, 2 of the 3 unfired cartridges, and the towel. Wow. Oh, and also, quote, police executed a search warrant on Robinson's residence. During that search, police discovered a shell casing with etchings like the etchings found on the shells in the rifle near UVU. Police also found several targets with bullet holes in Robinson's
Everyone,
home.
please
So
like
not
and
only do they have
subscribe.
evidence linking him to this alleged crime, they're also trying to show, right, preparation, planning. And these etchings that were found with the alleged murder weapon, what am I talking about? Notices bulge OWO. What's this? Hey, fascist, catch. Oh, Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Chow, Chow. If you read this, you are gay. So we go back to the idea, if they found etchings at his place that are consistent with this, it's pretty strong. You might think watching Sidebar, you've seen it all. Think again. Why? 50 Ways to Catch a Killer. This brings you real cases where detectives had to flip the script to take down cold-blooded killers. It's hosted by 50 Cent, and this isn't your typical crime show, okay? It is a high-stakes, twist-filled ride with the minds of investigators who think outside the badge to break the case. From unforgettable setups to shocking reveals, every episode proves when killers think they got away with murder,
Nobody gets away with murder.
Watch 50 Ways to Catch a Killer with 50 Cent exclusively on Fox Nation. So the information also goes into how Robinson's
People think they
mother
get
and
away with
father
murder, but nobody
suspected he was the shooter
does.
based on the images that were released by law enforcement. They apparently spoke to him on the phone. They had a family friend help turn himself in. So now you're talking about potential witnesses who will testify against him, okay? But we got to talk about this roommate, okay? This roommate is so important to this case. You may have seen reporting about the roommate. Governor Spencer Cox had announced that the roommate was cooperating. And now you are seeing how Robinson is accused of trying to get this roommate to delete evidence and stay quiet. But the criminal information and Gray, my gosh, revealed something else. Confirmed what was reported, that Robinson was apparently in this romantic relationship with this roommate.
He was? I didn't
Robinson's
know
mother
that.
claimed was a biological male transitioning genders. But here is what the criminal information says. On September 10th, 2025, the roommate received a text
Hit
message
that
from
like button,
Robinson, which
guys.
said,
Like and
"Drop
subscribe.
what you were doing.
Thank
Look
you. I
under my
appreciate
keyboard."
it.
The roommate looked under the keyboard and found a note that stated, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." Police found a photograph of this note.
Oh,
After reading the note, the roommate responded in a text, "What?" with a ton of question marks. And
oh, you had a
"You're
good
joking,
steak.
right?"
Steak with what?
To which Robinson replies, and I'm going to read portions of this text message exchange. I am still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you. The roommate writes, you weren't the one who did it, right? And Robinson allegedly replies, I am. I'm sorry. The roommate then later asks why, to which Robinson allegedly writes back, why did I do it? Roommate, yeah, Robinson. I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. The roommate also asks, how long have you been planning this? To which Robinson allegedly replies, a bit over a week, I believe. And then Robinson allegedly writes about getting the rifle. I'm wishing I had circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. I don't know if I had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about Prince. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits, didn't have the ability or time to bring it with. I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find Prince. How the bleep will I explain losing it to my old man? Goes on to say, remember how I was engraving bullets? The bleeping messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notices bulge UWU on Fox News, I might have a stroke. Robinson then allegedly texts, delete this exchange and don't talk to the media, please. Don't take any interviews or make any comments. If any police ask you questions, ask for a lawyer and stay silent. So that makes up the witness tampering charges, right? And how much of that exchange is consistent with the allegations that authorities put out about what the shooter did, right? I know, it's, how many times do we talk about text messages being some of the most important evidence you can have in a criminal case? Sometimes it's ambiguous, what did they mean, what not? This is really unambiguous in my opinion, but I'm gonna debate it out in a minute. But then later on in the day,
no spamming, no spamming.
Made his first court appearance. It was virtual. He appeared via the Utah County Jail, but it was an appearance for the 4th Judicial District Court.
Could you state your name?
Tyler James Robinson.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Robinson. I'm Judge Graff. Mr. Skordas.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. You're probably already aware of my presence or why I'm here, but if not, I am not entering an appearance. I'm not counsel on this case. I'm working with the county to get counsel assigned, but we need you to allow for the appointment of counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Skordas. I want to go through the qualifications for indigency, but that is my intent, Mr. Skordas.
Very well.
And I thank you for being here. So, Mr. Robinson, you have a right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, the court can appoint an attorney to represent you. I have reviewed your declaration of financial status and find that you are indigent. I'm provisionally appointing a Rule 8 qualified attorney to represent you on your case, Mr. Robinson. Along with the filing of their appearance of counsel, the assigned attorneys must file declarations with the court that outline their qualifications under Rule 8 and Rule 8C, under Rule 8B and Rule 8C for counsel appointment in a case where death may be a sentencing option. I'm ordering that those declarations be filed prior to the next hearing date, which is set for September 29th at 10 a.m. Mr. Robinson, I also wish to inform you of your rights against self-incrimination. Anything that you say in court today could be used against you, and we want to protect your constitutional rights. Mr. Robinson, at this time, you will remain in custody without bail. Mr. Skordas, is there any other points that you wish to address?
He's worried that so he don't kill himself.
Turning to the state.
Yes, Your Honor, Chad Grunander for the state. I'm also joined, and they're listed as attendees, Ryan McBride, Lauren Hunt, David Sturgill, and Chris Ballard. We are the trial team on this case. I do have a few points I'd like to bring up with Your Honor. We have filed a pretrial protective order on behalf of Erica Kirk. We would ask the court to review that. It should be in your review, Your Honor, and sign that.
Thank you. I have reviewed the pretrial protective order and will be issuing this pretrial protective order in favor of Erica Kirk. Is there any other business that we need to address today, counsel?
Just for the court's information, we did file just recently, within the last few minutes, a notice of intent to seek the death penalty that was filed by Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray. So that should be in the court's file.
Well, they're singing death penalty on this guy.
Lastly, I would just indicate to the court and to, at this point, Mr. Robinson, that we are prepared to collect all of the discovery in this matter and get that turned over to the defense as soon as possible. Rule 16 requires us to provide what we have relied on in charging the information in bringing these charges within 5 days once it's requested. So that'll be prepared to disseminate to the defense as soon as possible.
All right, so now I want to talk about all of this, and let me bring on renowned criminal defense attorney Bradford Cohen. Bradford, so good to see you.
Oh yeah, because I'm streaming on my phone.
First of all, I want to go over what we just saw in this court appearance. Why was there a protective order issued for Erica Kirk, right? Charlie Kirk's widow, the victim's widow in this case. What is that about?
Yeah, it's not unusual. It's usually typical in these type of cases where even if the individual is not getting a bond, the prosecutor always asks for a stay away order or a non-contact order. And why they do that is because just in case a third party is contacting, like they don't want someone calling from jail and speaking to their father, their mother. Not that that would happen in this case, but I'm just saying in any case, they don't want them speaking to anyone else and saying, hey, you should really have a discussion with Erica or see if she will back off the death penalty or anything like that. And that's why they enter these orders. And it's typical in these type of cases. It's not just typical in these type of cases. It's typical in any kind of violent
That guy's
crime
22.
whatsoever.
Is that also because he's been charged with obstruction and witness tampering? There's an emphasis on making sure that nobody harasses her or tries to.
Guy's an
talk to
idiot.
her
He's
in any
22
way.
and he threw
I think
his life out.
That can be one of the reasons. Like I said, I think it's very typical, especially in So I've had high profile cases across the board where, especially in high profile cases, they don't want
And I'm not
anyone
much older
that is
than him. I'm
related to
older
the
than him by
case
10 years. I'm
contacting
32 years
the
old.
victim's family or
I
any
knew
of the
better at
immediate
22
people
not
that
to
are
kill
around
anybody.
him, friends, anything like that. And this is, it's a really horrible case. So I didn't expect them not to do that. Let me put it that way. I thought that they would.
I'm
have
only a year
something
older
in
than the guy
effect
he killed.
that would say don't contact either his wife, his kids, or any of the immediate family.
By the way, the court ruled that he was indigent, and they have appointed him a Rule 8. It's appointment of counsel under Utah law. He can't afford his own attorney. Very interesting, because it seems at this point he's not getting any financial support from family or friends. Were you surprised to hear that?
Not really. I think that, at this point,
I'm gonna help
this
you out either. If you
individual
just kill somebody for
is
no reason.
persona non grata with everyone. I don't see his family really stepping up and paying for an attorney for him, not knowing what I know, if it is true, what the discussions he had with his father, the discussions he had with another sheriff that ended up helping him surrender. I'm not surprised that he doesn't have the money or that his family is not going to give him the money. It would also not shock me if some of these fringe, real left-wing organizations might come up with money to donate to him. In these cases, it's really quite interesting where individuals that have allegedly committed horrible crimes are either supported by different organizations or they get love letters suddenly and they're somehow put on a pedestal. And you see that in quite a few cases where the evidence is overwhelming, but there's still this need to support this individual because
He's gonna
people
get the death
support,
penalty.
quote unquote, the cause that this individual allegedly stood for. And you see that with Mangione in New York, where he's getting amazing support. And allegedly, he point blank assassinated a guy with 2 kids and a wife. So you see that quite often in these cases. And
that's a different situation, though. What Luigi is different. Luigi kills someone because
put themselves on the line for this.
He hates a
always
CEO.
Difficult because as defense attorneys, we are.
This guy's an idiot. Luigi killed someone because he was angry about the healthcare system.
Like a doctor.
Everybody's angry about the healthcare system. This guy killed someone because of what the guy believes.
Right? We're sworn to uphold the law and an oath to take cases. I personally take cases that I feel very vehemently about. I take cases that I'm passionate about. This type of case obviously is going to be very difficult to find a defense attorney that's going to be passionate about it.
And I'll get back to the defense in a second. You know, they mentioned September 29th, 10 a.m. is a waiver hearing where he can decide if he wants to waive a preliminary hearing, correct? So in Utah, there's a preliminary hearing where the prosecutor presents evidence to, you know, is there enough probable cause to move this forward to trial? If the judge says there is, then it goes into an arraignment, and then he will enter his plea of guilty or not guilty. Any advantage to waive a preliminary hearing or not waive a preliminary hearing? I can't imagine what the advantage would be to waive it, because wouldn't you kind of want to hear what the government's evidence is?
Yeah, you're spot on. So in districts where they have preliminary hearings, there's quite a few, California being one, you don't want to waive your preliminary hearing, because at the preliminary hearing, that's where you really start to figure out, okay, what are the witnesses going to say? What evidence do they have? What are they going to present? And don't forget, at a preliminary hearing, the state is also kind of playing these little games where they don't want to put on every bit of evidence, but obviously they want to show the strength of their case and the strength of the evidence that they have against the individual. And it's a very low burden to show that there is probable cause to arrest and charge this individual with the crime that they're charging him with. So that usually isn't the issue. Really, the issue here is going to be whether or not they want to put on this kind of dog and pony show when they know kind of the evidence that's already out there. My opinion is you have to. I think it's malpractice not to and waive that preliminary hearing. I think that would be a huge mistake in a case where it's this large. But again, you know, the evidence that I've seen, it's going to be a very difficult case for anyone to say that this was not him.
So that brings me to now what happened today, right? They have listed a number of charges against him. It's not necessarily right. Did he do it, right? Is he guilty of doing it? Is he guilty of aggravated murder? Is he guilty of obstruction? Is he guilty of witness tampering? I will tell you, I was talking about this before, there is a mountain of evidence. I mean, if they say that they have the DNA, his DNA on the rifle and the towel and on the trigger and the bullet casings, and they go back and found a search warrant and go to his house and they find engravings on a shell casing that match the other engravings, and then you have the parents who may be potential witnesses, you have this conversation with this roommate. You and I both know that text message conversations are such key evidence. I don't know how you say it's ambiguous. I mean, he allegedly admitted it's him, said why he did it, talked about things arguably maybe only the killer would know about, the rifle and the engravings. But at the same time, from a defense perspective, is the name of the game going to be, we try to have none of that evidence come in, and if it does come in, we say it doesn't meet the elements, the very specific elements of aggravated murder or enhancements that he's facing, you know, like with children being present or this being a killing done for political expression. I mean, is that the name of the game here?
Yeah, I think the name of the game is to mitigate it as much as possible. That would be my guess. The only advantage, when we're talking about preliminary hearings, the only advantage of waiving it would be if there was some sort of negotiation to take the death penalty off the table and not have to put people through a preliminary hearing. I don't see that happening in this case. I think that the only thing that they can do is mitigate the circumstances. I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories that are flying online. I've seen the videos. I've seen the evidence in terms of what they're presenting. I've read the PC affidavit. I've read those texts. I think that it's almost an impossible task to say that he did not do this.
He did do it.
The admission to his father, the gun that was given to him by his grandfather, the grandfather's probably going to come in and be a witness. The father himself, obviously they have very different political views from the text and things of that nature that he relayed to his roommate. I don't see this being anything but a mitigation type case where you're saying, okay, maybe the aggravators don't meet the requirement. Maybe it's not witness tampering. But even with witness tampering, It's not really a stretch when you're telling people, hey, get rid of
Delete
these
it.
texts.
Delete the message.
Right.
Don't talk.
Yeah, and not only that, they're going to triangulate these phones. They're going to know exactly where he was and when he was there. This is going to be a mountain of evidence. You'd have to live on a different planet or be a complete moron to think that there's some way to walk this guy. There is no way to walk this. And I just want to give you a caveat.
Yes,
that
yes.
I am slightly biased in this case because I have met Charlie Kirk many, many times at different events. And no matter what you feel about someone's political views or even their personal views, he was just a good kid to talk to, funny kid, knowledgeable kid. And those are the things hopefully are not lost in these cases where, you just simply talk about, the evidence against the defendant and the defendant himself. Hopefully that does not get lost in this case. And this is a real tragedy. Not that any murder is a good murder, but this was a tragedy because it was what we consider someone who is just someone that's off the battlefield. He's just someone who was giving his opinion on things and was murdered because of his opinion.
And I say the same thing with the Mangione case in the sense that I don't care if you hated Charlie Kirk. I don't care if you disagreed with every single thing that he said. Murder is wrong. Murder can never be the answer. And for those who are not convinced by that argument, what would you say if someone else who has a different opinion than you says, you know what? You deserve to die. Your hero deserves to die because of their opinions. This becomes a very slippery slope. I said it with Mangione. I'll say it now. It doesn't just end with health insurance executives. It goes to politics. It goes to real estate. It goes to this. It goes to that. There's a lot of enemies in society.
Yeah.
You can't turn to violence. Okay, I get off my soapbox because
it was a good soapbox.
From the defense, though, and look, the evidence, if they can present all of this and it comes into court, it's such a strong case. However, aggravated murder, they're trying to say it was a killing done in the commission of an incident. There were circumstances where it presented a grave risk of death to others. The idea of firing a shot, yes, Charlie Kirk was the target, but you're firing a shot into an open crowd. Is there room for a defense to say, I don't think that's aggravated murder? Is there grounds to say, was this really a killing done for political expression? Yes, he was killed right as he's talking about gun violence, right as he's talking about the transgender community, a killing done in the presence of children. They focused a lot about that. Again, going back to these elements, look what just happened with Mangione. They threw out some of his charges because they said they weren't terrorism. It didn't fit the definition. Is that what we're talking about here?
I mean, that's the only thing that they can argue. I think it's going to be very difficult. Like I said, there's a couple things at play, right? The first thing at play is whether or not there is case law in Utah that this meets the criteria, right? One shot in a large crowd that's aimed specifically at one individual is not going to be considered aggravated murder. I don't know of any case law that stands for either for or against that. I think that it's going to be a difficult case because of that. And then I think the secondary thing that it's a difficult case in these high profile cases, I was surprised, not shocked in the Mangione case, because I thought the terrorism charge was a little unusual in that case, the state terrorism charge, because of the way that went down. As opposed to this, I mean, there were children present, right? This was a big gathering of 3,000 people that brought kids and brought other individuals to this event. I think that's the only thing they have is to argue those things. And how far does it get them there?
Guys,
right?
I'm gonna come back later. Thank you for joining us.
Let's say you eliminate some of those things.
Don't
It's
forget to
still
like
a
and
first-degree
subscribe.
murder
Thank you.
case. It's still a death penalty case. Even without those things, I think there's still enough aggravators where it's still going to be a death penalty case. So it's like, is the juice worth the squeeze?